ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، حبيبنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. So we are continuing with our Stories of the Quran series every night as we give a little explanation of the Quran. Today we are going to do from the second juz, Surah Baqarah, Ayah 177. And mashallah, this is an amazing ayah. And even more amazing about this ayah, maybe telling about this ayah, is its place in Surah Baqarah. Surah Baqarah is a very long surah. It's the longest surah. And this ayah, it comes about halfway through Surah Baqarah. And what really is amazing is that this ayah, which is like in the middle of Surah Baqarah, it takes the points that came before it and it connects it with the points that come after it. In this ayah, why don't we read the ayah first? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر والملائكة والكتاب والنبيين وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والموفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء وحين البأس أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المتقون. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that righteousness is not merely that you turn your faces to the east and the west, but righteousness is that one believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the last day, the malaika, the book, the prophets, and that one gives their wealth despite their love to those who are the relatives who are close, the orphans, the poor, the travelers, those who ask, and spends in the path of freeing the slaves, establishes the salah, gives the zakah, fulfills their oaths when they make an oath, those who are patient in hardship and difficulty, and at the time when when they enter, and أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المتقون. Those are the truthful and those are the people of taqwa. So as I was saying, this ayah is really interesting in the sense that it comes in the middle of Surah Baqarah. The points that were made before this ayah in the surah refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking more or less mostly towards those people who are non-Muslims, those people who denied the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So first, the truth of the Quran being haqq, was explained to them. And those who accepted it and those who rejected. Meaning, the Quran speaks about those who accepted the truth when it came to them and those who rejected it when it came to them. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about Ibrahim alayhi salam and his children and the blessings that were given to them. Then after that comes this discussion about the Qibla. Well, the Qibla was changed. And so the Quran speaks about that change. And then afterwards, there's a point about Safa and Marwa. And then comes a discussion about Tawheed and Shirk. And then the mention that the former, meaning Tawheed, is the reality. It's what the entire universe is based upon. And then the latter, meaning Shirk, is falsehood completely. And so most of the points were in regard to those people who rejected. And there are points mentioned towards the believers as well, but that's more in passing. So we find when we go through all of these topics, that the first part of Surah Baqarah is mostly directed at the non-Muslims and their arguments and the kuffar and how they rejected the beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then comes this ayah. And from this ayah, there's a transition in which Allah starts speaking mostly to the believers. This ayah is about righteousness. Inshallah, we'll get into it. After speaking about righteousness, then Allah, He changes his direction and starts speaking to the believers mostly, teaching them about the usul of deen, the principles of deen, and about the smaller aspects of deen under it. And in passing, he speaks about the kuffar and to the kuffar as well, but mostly now the audience are the believers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he starts off by saying, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. That this idea of bir, what is bir? We translate it as righteousness, but bir is a very comprehensive term. It's a comprehensive term in the sense that it includes all of the types of good and khair, whether that be outward or inward. What happened was after Hijrah, after some time after Hijrah, the Qibla was changed. It was towards Baytul Maqdis in Jerusalem, and then it was changed towards the Kaaba in Mecca. The Kuffar, especially the Yahud, and made a very big deal about this. And before this ayah, their contentions were answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A person came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he asked the Prophet about bir. And so this ayah was revealed. So here, the person who's asking the question, his question is answered, but the greater context of the situation is that there was a big to-do from the kuffar, from the kitabis, about the qibla. And so Allah answers both of them in one. The other groups, meaning the kitabis, they made a very big deal about the direction. So the Yahud would face towards Baytul Maqdis, they would face towards the west. And the Nasara used to face towards the east. And they made it seem like all of deen was just about direction. That your identity was which way you faced. And if outwardly you didn't face in the same direction as they did, then that was it. You were against them. You were completely on the wrong path. It's interesting to mention that this isn't something that the Muslims were immune to. Even back then, when the kuffar were arguing with one another and they were throwing this allegation against the Muslims for having changed their direction, the Muslims themselves got into this fight as well, this discussion, saying that we are facing towards the Kaaba, which was built by our forefather and your forefather, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the Yahud would say, no, the Baytul Maqdis was the Qibla for those children of Ibrahim alayhi salam that came afterwards, the other Anbiya. And the Christians likewise had their argument as well. So they were beginning to judge one another based upon what they were doing, just outwardly based upon this direction of Qibla. And the Muslims fell into that. In fact, we find that Muslims still fall into that. That even today in our excitement, in our partisanship, that it gets the best of us sometimes. We start judging one another by the same thing. That what does this person look like on the outside? Maybe he does one action. He may not even know why he does that action. But as soon as we see that person do that action, then right away we attach a label to him. Oh, this person's a Sufi, this person's a Salafi, this person's such and such and such. And right away, when the person himself may have no idea why he's doing it, he saw someone or he was taught it and he did it. Perhaps inside he's an entirely different person. Wallahu a'lam, we don't know. But we make the same mistake that we take all of deen and we make it into one mas'ala, into one situation. And we start judging people based upon that. So back then, as it does today, this leads to a lot of fitna. People start arguing with one another. They start causing divisions where divisions didn't have to exist. So the people at that time were saying that Allah does not accept the salah of a person unless he prays towards the same direction that we pray towards. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he puts an end to this discussion by saying, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبْلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. That righteousness, and remember, bir means all righteousness, all goodness. That bir is not whether you face this direction or face that direction, whether you face the east or the west, but rather bir, we'll find out, is about obedience. So that was point one, that the direction itself is not the point. The point is obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then point number two, that whatever the kitabis were talking about was all mansukh anyway. It was all abrogated. Perhaps before the Anbiya were facing towards a different direction. But now it doesn't matter because you have the Prophet of Allah in front of you. And he received wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that changed the direction. So at this point, all those things that you were arguing about, all those things that all those labels that you were throwing and the allegations that you were making against the beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, well, that's useless at this point because it's all abrogated. This is also a great reminder for us that in the same way that the direction is not the point is obedience. That we find ourselves in a situation now that we don't have the iftars that we normally have. We don't get together on the weekends in the masjid with our family like we normally do. We don't have those big cultural foods and mixing of cultures that we normally do in the month of Ramadan. And that's not to say that iftar isn't a part of our deen, it is. But this is not the point of our deen. This was never the point of fasting. This was never the point of Ramadan. I've had some non-Muslims who have come to me and asked me, is Ramadan canceled this year? And I found that very odd the first time I heard it. I said no, and I just kept on going. But then a second time and a third time from different people asking, is Ramadan canceled this year? And I didn't quite understand what they meant. How can a month be canceled? The month is going to come whether we have lockdown or not. And so what they meant is that from their understanding, the point of Ramadan was getting together. That the point of Ramadan was to eat food and to fast during the day so that you can have your iftar at night. That they thought that all of Ramadan was just about eating and mixing and being with people. But we know better. We know that the month of Ramadan is not about this. The month of Ramadan is about developing our taqwa. It's about developing our obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These things are nice. Getting together is all fine and good. Having iftar in a cultural way or in a big way, and however, that's all fine and good. But this is not the point. In the same way, whether you pray towards the west or you pray towards the east or north or south, whatever direction you're praying towards, that is not the point. The point of prayer is not the direction. The direction itself is not what we're praying to. We're not praying to the east. The east is not our God. Rather, the reward of Allah and His pleasure, this is the one thing that we want. This is obedience towards Him. So if obedience towards Him at one point is to face Baytul Maqdis, then we do that. If obedience towards Him is to face towards the Kaaba, then we do that. If obedience towards Him was to face some other direction, we would have done that. This is the point of deen. This is the bottom line of our deen. This is the bottom line of being a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the bottom line is obedience is not what is perceived to be on the outside. It's not what's perceived to be on the inside, although those things are important as well. So Allah starts off by saying, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبْلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. This idea of bir is not this. Bir is not turning in a direction. وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what exactly is bir. But again, in the beginning, I told you that bir has a definition to it. And that definition refers to khair in general, all goodness in general. Whether that be outward or inward, it refers to all of that in obedience to Allah, all good acts in obedience to Allah. Instead of explaining the definition of bir, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us is a practical answer. That if you want bir, then this is what you need to develop. And so this ayah indicates that there are three parts to bir. The first part has to do with belief, aqa'id. The second part has to do with your actions, a'mal. And the third part has to do with your characteristic, your akhlaq, your inward characteristic. These are the three headings of bir. And now if you really look at it, all of our deen will fall under one of these three headings. So in a way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is setting the groundwork for our deen. He's saying that if you want bir, if you want righteousness, then you have to become a complete believer. If you want to become a complete believer, then here are the aspects of complete belief. So the first part, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ, and so on, that it has to do with iman. The first part of bir is to have correct aqidah, correct belief, to incorporate all of our beliefs about Allah, the last day, the angels, the prophets, and the books, and bring it and have it understood in a correct way. We don't want to be like the Kitabis, where they brought shirk into their belief. And they started saying things like some of the Yahud would say that Uzair was the son of Allah. The Christians, even till today, say that Isa was the son of Allah. We don't want to incorporate shirk into our deen. The first aspect of bir is strict tawheed and fulfilling our belief and the haqq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our belief pertains to Him. In our times, we have a third group now. Back then it was just the Jews and the Christians, but now we have a third group. And these are those people who reject everything, and instead they make themselves the sole authority in all things. They reject Allah, they reject Isa, they reject religion in general, outwardly. But in doing that, they've created a religion for themselves. And in the middle of that religion is themselves. And now they consider themselves to be the only authority. Who decides what's good and what's bad? I do. Who decides what I should do and what I shouldn't do? I do. And really, this is also a belief. This is also a religion. So the first step to having bir is the foundation of bir, we can say, is aqidah. It is to have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He is the only ilah, no other God, that He has no partners, and there's no one else should be worshipped besides Him. And this type of iman, when you understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then after that, you understand that you should not bow your head to anyone else. No one else is worthy of it. And you understand that the sharia, meaning those things that we should do, we shouldn't do, the laws that we should follow, that only Allah has the right to set those laws and nobody else. And if anyone else tries to set it, we will reject it immediately. This is only if you understand the place of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you have this type of proper iman, then it brings content and calmness to your heart as well. That if you get some sort of blessing, some sort of blessing, then you don't become haughty over it. And if you get some sort of hardship, then you don't become despair. You don't lose hope over it either. You don't become despair. It's as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُم بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. That those who believe and their hearts find contentment with the remembrance of Allah, and that Allah brings attention. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. That pay attention. With the remembrance of Allah comes contentment in the heart. And then, so once we understand that aqidah is the first thing that we need to do, this is the first foundation that we need to set. Then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts speaking about a'mal, about actions. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَالسَّائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةَ. Now we link to righteous actions. So we're trying to build a complete iman here. So complete iman will happen with the right beliefs, but it needs to be linked with the right actions as well. Those actions which please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you have these two linked together, then a person becomes civilized. What do I mean by civilized? I don't mean dressing a certain way. I don't mean speaking a certain way, or learning a language, or reading books and other things, being of some sort of culture. Perhaps today we think of the civilized person as a person who fits a certain description that is really more of a worldly description. But rather, when we talk about proper aqidah and we talk about proper actions civilizing a person, we mean by that true civility. And true civility being a person who molds himself according to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, meaning according to the fitrah that we are all supposed to be upon. Now, when that happens in a person, he has the right aqidah, he has the right actions, then at that point, this person changes. He becomes a person of mercy, of rahmah. He becomes a person of love, of concern for other people, a person who wants to help other people and bring people together. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about that type of person. This type of person has certain characteristics to him. The first one is that وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ, that he gives his wealth عَلَى حُبِّهِ. What does عَلَى حُبِّهِ mean? The scholars have said that it has three different meanings. Imam Jassas, rahimahullah, he actually said that you can take all three meanings at the same time. The ayah has that capability, has that expansiveness to it. So the first meaning of ala hubbihi, so hub is love, we all know. Hubbihi, the he is a dhamir, it's a pronoun. It has to go back to something, meaning it's the love of something. So what is that something? There's three opinions on this. Number one is that it is the love, the hu dhamir, the hu pronoun, it goes back to Allah. That a person gives wealth ala hubbihi according to what Allah loves, according to what Allah desires from us. So this person is doing it solely for the sake of Allah, without wanting their name in it as well at all, without wanting their desire as a part of that giving at all. So he gives the wealth only according to what Allah wants. The second is that it means according to, or in despite the love of his wealth. Ala hubbihi, the he being his wealth. So here, a person naturally inclines, most people naturally incline towards their wealth. Perhaps they worked for it. Perhaps they had to go through some difficulty to get it, or maybe they just like it because they like it. You know, mal means to be inclined towards something. So by its very nature, mal is something that a person is inclined towards. So when you part from something that you love, part from something that you like, there's difficulty involved in that. So وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ means that he gives his wealth despite the fact that he is attached to it. He loves it. And it also means that he gives what he loves, not that he gives something he cares nothing for. That's not really what Allah is speaking about here. That the person of bir is the one who gives the wealth that he loves. He wants to hold on to it, but he gives it away despite that. And then the third meaning for this pronoun is that ala hubbihi, that he gives it because of his love of giving. So meaning this person loves to give. They do it freely, it's in their nature, without any hard feelings, without any stinginess, without any hardship in their heart. They love to give, and so they do it. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. Three meanings to it. Number one, according to what Allah desires, meaning for the sake of Allah. Number two, despite the fact that you have an inclination towards it, you give what you love most. And number three, that you give because you love to give. The act of ita, you like to do it, and so you do it. So here Allah is saying about the person of bir, after saying that he has a proper aqidah, that let me give you some traits. The first trait, وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ, that he gives his wealth with all of these things in mind. Now, who does he give it to? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us an indication that these are the people that you should look out for. If you want to have real righteousness, real bir, then keep your radar open for these people. Who are they? ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب. Let's break each one down very quickly. ذوي القربى are those people that are related to you. These are people who are related to, who are close to you, and they are in need. There is a connection between you and them, and that is that you share a common blood. You share a common ancestry. And normally, perhaps today, not so much, but before, families used to be very close to one another. And so you would know what condition your family was in. Not just your immediate family, but even your extended family. You would know who was doing well, and you would know who was in hardship. And so by giving it to those people first, one, there's a connection between you and them through your relationship, through blood. And then number two, you know their situation best. And so you should give to them first. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, صَدَقْتُكْ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ صَدَقَةً وَعَلَى ذِي رَحْمِكَ إِثْنَتَانِ. That your sadaqah to a believer is one sadaqah. I mean, you get the reward of one sadaqah. And then your sadaqah to someone who is related to you, then you get two sadaqahs for that. You get double the reward for it, because you're taking care of sadaqah, a human being, and at the same time, you're also taking care of your relative. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in another hadith that ibda binafsik, that when it comes to your wealth, start with yourself, meaning take care of your needs first. ثم بمن تعول, Then go looking at your relationships, your relatives. Start with those who are closest to you in relation first, and then work your way out from there. So he gave us a tartib, he gave us a way of how we should spend our wealth. Start with yourself, those things that you need, take care of that. Then take care of your immediate family, and then take care of your second out from there, and so on and so on, and look for people that way. وَالْيَتَامَى, and then the orphans. These are those people who don't have fathers, they don't have family, they don't have anyone to take care of them, to look after them. And here, the meaning is more than just money. You know, you can't just dump money on an orphan and walk away. What is he supposed to do with it? What is she supposed to do with it? Maybe they'll eat, maybe they'll drink, but there's something even more important than that. You have to teach them how to live, how to earn a livelihood. You have to teach them, you have to do their tarbiyah. Who's going to teach them how to become civilized? How to become muhaddib? Who's going to do this for them? So spending upon the yatim doesn't mean just throwing money at them, but it also means taking care of their other needs, like teaching them a trade, how to make something, a certain profession, to make sure that their tarbiyah doesn't get ruined. Because if it does, then they are going to be a harm to themselves, and then they will be a harm to society as well. And so look after the orphans, take care of them, their monetary needs, as well as all their other needs as well, because they don't have someone to do that for them. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, Masakin are the people that are poor. And we'll see later when we talk about the sa'ilin, that here masakin refers to those people who are not out begging. They are within their homes, quiet. And so they have their difficulty at home. And so it's our job to find these people. Don't expect them to come knocking on your door. Don't wait for them to come to the masjid and have to beg for their situation, but rather we as believers, as brothers and sisters, it's our job to look out for that. So we need to know who are the masakin in our community and take care of them. And then Ibn Sabil, the traveler. Here, Ibn means the son of, Sabil, the road, the path. So literally, the son of the path, the son of the road, the child of the road. It means the traveler. So this is the person who is cut off from their wealth back home. Maybe they have wealth back home, maybe they're not. Maybe they're a billionaire back home. But right now in their travel, they're lost or they're disconnected, so they don't have their wealth with them. So in this situation, they are relatively poor, and it's our responsibility to take care of them. So if a person is coming through our town and they don't have the means, maybe the car broke down, maybe they lost their wallet, whatever the case might be in our situation today, it's our responsibility to step up and take care of those people. And they were called this, just as a point of interest, Ibn Sabil, because in their odd situation that they find themselves in, it's like they have no father, they have no mother, they have no children, because they're disconnected from all of them. So although they may be rich in family, right now they're poor and they have nothing. So it's as if they are orphans in a way. And so for that reason, because they don't have a father or a mother, Ibn Sabil, their nisbah is given towards the road instead. And then wasa'ilun. The sa'ilun are those people who ask. They come to people, they stretch out their hands, and they have to beg, they have to ask, because their need is so great that they couldn't stay at home to take care of it. So they had to come knocking on our doors, they had to come knocking on the masjid, they had to come wherever they could so that they could be taken care of. Normally, people are at home, there are masakin at home, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يَحْسَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَاءَ مِنَ التَّعَفُّفِ, that those people who are ignorant of their condition, they think that they're fine. But the fact is they're not. And it's only when they get to this point that they have to come out and ask. But when they do ask, there's a saying in the Arabic language, هَدِيَّةُ اللَّهِ إِلَى الْمُؤْمِنِ السَّائِلْ عَلَى بَابِهِ, that the gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards a believer is the sa'il, the one who is asking, begging at your door. It's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity presenting itself in front of you. That Allah is saying, you don't even have to leave your home. I have brought the opportunity to you. Before I move on from here, before I forget, let me remind everybody that most of the time, normally in Ramadan, we're in the masajid, and those people who represent the people of need, they come and they ask us. The messages will ask us after every Jum'ah. People will ask those people who represent the poor, who look after them, those people who represent people in need and look after them. They have a direct, conduit to us to ask us. But now that's been cut off. So now it's our responsibility. Before they were coming to our door, now it's our responsibility that we go to them. So whether it be taking care of the masjid, whether it be taking care of the orphans, or taking care of the poor, whoever it may be, keep in mind that those people don't have access to you right now. So it's our responsibility that we go and find them. So whatever money you spent last year or the year before that you would normally spend in Ramadan, those funds that would normally be, sometimes we have to be convinced of it. It has to be taken from us for us to give it. Inshallah, this year we should do the same thing, but give it freely. As the saying goes, Hadiyatullah. This is a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards a believer. So let's go and get that gift this time around. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ هُوَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ. That don't let those people who greedily hold on to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them from His own fadl, from His own bounty, don't let those people think that it is better for them to hold on to it. بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ, but rather it's worse for them. سَيُطَوَّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, that their necks will be they'll be encircled by that which they held on to in this dunya. It'll be encircled on the day of resurrection. That which they held on to, they were stingy with it here. Instead, it'll be choking them on the day of judgment. وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the inheritor of everything in the heavens and the earth. It belongs to Him. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ, and He is aware of everything that you do. So let's make sure that we keep that in mind and we don't forget. وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةَ. So going on with the characteristics of the people of Bir, the next characteristic is that they established salah. And by this, there's two things to keep in mind. In fact, there's three things to keep in mind. The first is by iqamah, it means that we establish the salah in the outward sense, that we fulfill all of its conditions, we fulfill all of its arkan, and we establish it in a proper way physically. But it also includes that our hearts are attentive towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and towards the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we contemplate on the Quran when it is being recited or when we are reading it. And it includes remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the salah itself is a form of dhikr. And finally, number three, it should keep us away from fahisha. It should keep us away from disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah said, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha. That the salah prevents us from doing bad deeds, bad actions. Anil fahsha'i wal munkar, and from those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden us from. As well as wa'at az-zakah, and to give zakah. One important thing to notice is that you see on the slide here, wa'at al-mala, to give wealth, and then wa'at az-zakata. So the first part of this portion of the ayah refers to giving sadaqah to this group of people. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, when these group of people are there, then give them sadaqah. And then a second command is coming for zakah afterwards. Because zakah is the first is the right of people. These people have a right upon you that you help them. The next one, ata az-zakah, wa'at az-zakah. This refers to the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we obey Him and we pay our sadaqah. Because in this, you will find often in the Quran that salah and zakah come together. There's a link between the two of them. Because salah, it reforms the soul. It gives nourishment to the soul. It purifies the soul. And in a similar way, zakah purifies our wealth. It makes our wealth completely halal if we do it, and if we don't, then it'll be contaminated. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. That take from their wealth, take sadaqah from their wealth, meaning sadaqah here refers to zakah. Take zakah from their wealth so that it will purify them and they will become purified by it. And then the next part of the ayah. So we spoke about aqidah, we spoke about a'mal, about actions. Now we're going to talk about akhlaq. We're going to talk about the characteristics of a believer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. So these are the people that fulfill their covenant. So whenever they make an oath, they fulfill that oath. And they are patient in the situation of ba's and patient in the situation of darra. So what does ba'sa mean? Ba'sa refers to that particular situation that is financial in nature or situational in nature, whereas darra speaks to the physical sickness, pain that we feel. So regardless of that situation, they are patient. Let's go back to mufun though. There's an interesting point about mufun. Mufun is ism fa'il. And what that means is that what ism fa'il denotes is a continuation in that action. Meaning it's not something that somebody just did once or twice. It's not something that a person did based upon their situation, but rather this is something that a person does continuously. Meaning it is a part of their being. It is a part of their identity. It makes them. You know, for example, we can say that so-and-so is intelligent. And so by that, we're saying that he's always intelligent. We say so-and-so is generous. We don't mean that he was generous once or twice. We mean that that guy is always generous. It's a part of who he is. He's known by it. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying about the believer, about the person of bir, that he is always fulfilling his rights, his covenants, his oaths, to a point that this defines him. This is who he is. Because there are even non-Muslims that fulfill their oaths. What's the difference between a non-Muslim and a Muslim? A Muslim, it's a part of his being. It's a part of him being a Muslim. He does it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It cannot be separated from him. It's a part of his characteristic and trait. Whereas this is not so for a non-Muslim. So the point here is not that it's just a good trait, but it's representative of who that person is. Now here, mufun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just brought it as an example of one of the akhlaq, because it is one of the greatest of akhlaq, that a person have this trait. Allah is not listing out all the good traits here, but rather a person who keeps their word in every situation is likely going to have all of the other good traits as well. And so by mentioning this one, it was sufficient. Same thing with having sabr. A person who is sabr will have all the other good traits as well. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about these people, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. These are the people that are righteous, and these are the people of taqwa. So if you have bir, and then Allah defines bir by its aqidah, by its a'mal, by its actions, and by its characteristics, by his or her characteristics, and then he says about them, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا. These are the people that are truthful. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. The people of taqwa are these people. Why the people of taqwa? Because these are the people that fear Allah. They fear Allah's punishment, and they stay away from disobeying Him. And these are the people of bir, as explained in the ayah. The two go hand in hand. What about sadiqun? Sadiqun because they have sidq in their iman. They are truthful in their iman. And by bringing this whole ayah together, then a person completes their iman as well. You become a complete mu'min by bringing all of this together. So because we're running short on time, let's just jump to this slide here and bring it together. In this ayah, there are 16 different principles that can be delineated from it. You can just list them out as I did here. So the first one, is that a person has iman in Allah, His names and attributes. And then number 2, iman in the gathering. So we're talking about iman in the akhirah, that in the akhirah we will gather together to be judged. The account will take place, the hisab will take place. The sirat, we will have to cross it. The hawd of the Prophet ﷺ, the pool, we will meet there. The intercession of the Prophet ﷺ is true. And then there will be Jannah or there will be Jahannam, depending on how you lived your life. Then there's the iman in the malaika, the iman in the books, the iman in the prophets. And then the ayah speaks about spending wealth, both obligatory and voluntary. Obligatory meaning the zakah, and voluntary meaning sadaqah. And then it speaks about joining relations with your relatives and not cutting them off. Keeping close to them so that you know their situations, so that you can help them when they need that help. And if you ever fall into a situation where you need help, they will know about your situation and they can help you as well. Taking care of the orphans. And as I said, not just money, but in a complete comprehensive way so that all of their needs are met and that they become full believers, contributing to the community and ones that know how to connect themselves with their Prophet and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taking care of the poor, that we look after their needs as well, not wait until they have to come to our door. Taking care of the traveler as well, assisting those people who ask for help when it finally gets to the point where they need to come knocking, helping them out. And then wafir riqab, I didn't really have a chance to speak about fir riqab. Fir riqab refers to those people before when there was slavery. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that part of bir is to find these people and free them from their bondage. Go spend your money to buy their freedom, to help them so that they can become free and become believers just like the rest of us. And then taking care of your salah, taking care of your zakah, establishing your salah, giving your zakah, purifying your ruh and your inside, and purifying your wealth and your property on the outside. Number 15, keeping your word. And then number 16, being patient in hardship. So let me bring all of this together and then we'll finish on this. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the ayah, let's go back to it so we have it all in front of us. Allah is telling us in this ayah that لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, that the point is not the direction. That itself is not important or rewarding. This is like a person who on the outside he appears really nice, but the inside traits have wasted away. They've become bad, corrupted. Or like that person who on the inside is nice, but his outside is not in accordance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what Allah desires from him. The point is to beautify ourselves both on the inside and on the outside with a proper, complete iman and yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our deen. So a person beautifies the inside with iman and yaqeen, and a person beautifies the outside with the obedience towards what the deen calls us to do. It's not good enough to just be one or the other. You need to be both. You need to purify your inside from bad traits like jealousy, stinginess, deceit, lying, fear, and so on. And you need to beautify your outside as well with good traits. Like, you remove the bad traits from the inside and we beautify the inside with good traits like generosity, nobleness, fulfilling your oaths, fearing Allah, fulfilling your trusts, having patience and bravery, chastity, obedience, and so on. And keep in mind that a person who fulfills their trusts is fulfilling it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not fulfilling your trust to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in fulfilling the trust. And then when a person beautifies himself, purifies himself from all of these bad traits and beautifies himself with good traits, then that person will be from the abrar. He'll be a person of bir. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us all of our sins. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove the bad traits from the inside and the outside, and in turn replace them with good traits, those traits that are pleasing to Him, both on the inside and on the outside, and make us people who are obedient to Him, people of taqwa, and in doing that we become among the abrar. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from among them, join us with our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his companions in Jannatul Firdaus. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح